Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I start off by transporting a horse that turned out to be a bit of a tricky loader. And to be honest, this got me thinking about tricky seasons in life too. My life since becoming a mum has turned upside down and inside out in so many ways. And even though I feel so fortunate to be able to do a job I love, have a horse of my own, and be a parent, the reality of trying to maintain a balance between all three of these things is hard. So I thought we'd start to get into the reality of this in today's video. So grab yourself a cuppa and let's get into it. It is currently 7:45 in the morning. It's a Saturday. Now, I don't usually work on a Saturday, so this is a bit unusual for me, but I am working today. I have got a transport trip this morning. It's a yard relocation. So yeah, I have stopped off en route to the farm for coffee. I've also got one for my friend because she is coming with me this morning, so I'm going to have a bit of company, so that will be nice. Right, I better get going. First things first, I need to make sure I've got both water and hay on board. It's super important to always travel with both when transporting horses, as you never know when you may get stuck in traffic or break down. So carrying food and water supplies are essential for both horses and people. Okay, so here I am with my friend. Hi there, hi. We are going to go and collect this horse. It's about 50 minutes away. So we are going to set off now, and hopefully the roads should be nice and clear because it's the weekend. Well, that didn't really make sense, did it? If it's the weekend, they probably won't be clear. Oh well,
it will be clear.
It's early.
Rush hour.
Yeah, we'll see. Fingers crossed. So this horse turned out to be a bit of a tricky loader. Usually I tend to load the horses myself, especially if they're a bit tricky to load. However, due to currently being pregnant, I've decided it's safer not to handle any unpredictable horses. Luckily, this fabulous groom was on hand to assist. One of my top tips for loading a tricky horse is to always keep their head directed in the direction you want them to go, i.e. towards the inside of the horse box itself. It doesn't matter if they bend their bodies around the ramp and position themselves to the side, you always want to ensure their head is facing the direction in which you want them to travel. It's also super important to remain calm yourself. A lot of the time, hesitation to load is due to some form of anxiety, and horses are incredibly sensitive in picking up and in turn feeding off our own demeanours. So if we end up getting all het up, this in turn will have a similar effect on the horse. Therefore, if we remain calm and patient, the horse will pick up on this, and this will help convey an element of trust from the horse that all is in fact okay. We're essentially telling them through our own body language that there's nothing to fear. It's always a great sign when a horse puts their head down to take a sniff of the ramp. This usually means they're thinking and considering whether to walk on forward or not. Always allow your horse the freedom to lower their head and do this. You'll see this groom is quietly persistent in asking the horse to walk forwards. His body language remains calm and he's consistently clear in asking the horse to walk forwards. Eventually, the horse relents and decides with a touch of bravery and a bit of panache that all is probably okay, and we can see here that with a little bit of gusto jumps on into the horse box. Okay, he is on. As you saw, he was a little bit tricky, a little bit of an attitude, but thankfully there was a lovely groom at the yard to assist. So yeah, we are gonna get him to his new home. Being a horse transporter, you won't be surprised to hear that I often work with tricky loaders. I always want to ensure I've finished a job having given the horse a positive loading and travelling experience. And it got me thinking this week how many of the skills I've adopted along the way to assist me with these tricky loaders can also be applied to tricky seasons I've experienced in life. For me in particular, becoming a mum and having to learn to adjust my work and life around this has been a particularly tricky time. I've often felt a bit like an anxious horse, unsure of whether to continue forward on the path I'm on or divert off to the side. It's been a real struggle as a self-employed business owner to try and find a balance between work and motherhood and owning a horse. So I thought it might be quite nice to just cover a few of the main things I've struggled with in attempting to find that balance as a working horsey mum. So the number one thing I've struggled with is guilt. And I'm sure every parent will relate to this one. I feel guilt if I'm not working enough and therefore not contributing enough financially into the household. I feel guilt if I'm working too much and not spending that time with my daughter Evie. And I feel guilt that I don't spend nearly as much time as I used to with my horse Stax. I often feel like I'm being pulled in these 3 different directions at the same time, and I'm constantly trying my best to fulfill the needs of all 3. My priority will always be my daughter Evie, and so I try my best to remedy this 3-way pull by prioritising her needs and then trying my best to fit transport jobs around her schedule. And then any spare time I have, I try to spend giving my horse as much TLC as I can. This leads me quite neatly on to the second struggle I experience. And again, I'm sure every parent out there will relate. Finding time for oneself. Only a few years ago, my life looked incredibly different. I was single, living at home, investing luxuriously in the building and working of my business, and spending hours of the day with my horse Stax. I was able to pop out last minute on a whim for a show jumping lesson, or perhaps to a show itself, or even just a fabulously long hack with a friend. And then I might finish the day off by reading my book for hours on end. I'm certainly not able to do these things these days, and it can be really hard to adjust your life from having lived so fortunately freely in the past to sacrificing this freedom to take care of a child. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have it any other way. I adore being a mum, but the reality is that it can be hard at times, lamenting after how time-rich you once were. I remedy this by reminding myself that this is simply the chapter I'm currently in life, and I try to absorb every moment of Evie being young, as I know the kicker is, one day I'll look back and wish I could live a day in the life that I'm currently living. The last struggle I'm going to talk about is simply how difficult it is being a self-employed person, or maybe I should say woman, and having a child. From the moment I got pregnant, both times, my workload immediately declined due to the nature of my particular job. Working with large, unpredictable animals. I have not been prepared to take a risk by working with horses that I don't know, and this subsequently means I've had to turn a lot of jobs and money down. Here in the UK, the cost of living at the moment has increased significantly over the past few years, and so it's been a real struggle to try and find a balance between working enough to maintain business and household running costs, whilst at the same time trying to make the safest decisions for my pregnancy. Although I am entitled to maternity allowance from the UK government, unfortunately the maximum amount of this doesn't even cover half of my contribution towards our household costs. And the rules of maternity allowance state that you're not allowed to work during the time you receive it. So I've also had to try my best to save money in advance to subsidise. I'm not even going to go into how difficult it is to try and claim maternity allowance as a self-employed person who runs their own business. Suffice to say, I needed a lot of assistance from my accountant, and even he needed time to research and look into it all properly. This has been the same story for me when trying to claim the free childcare that working parents in the UK are entitled to. I found that if you're self-employed, every single step seems 10 times as difficult. I've remedied this struggle by reminding myself that I am so fortunate to be able to do a job that I'm passionate about and that allows me the flexibility to spend more time with my daughter than a lot of other parents get to do, who are perhaps in a more restrictive 9-to-5 job. To summarise, being self-employed, being a horse owner, being a mum, and trying my best to balance all three of these things in my life has been and continues to be a struggle at times. But ultimately, I feel very fortunate, and I try and remind myself when I'm perhaps feeling overtired or overwhelmed that it is in fact a privilege to be able to struggle in the first place. I think it's important to try and sustain a sense of perspective during these moments and to remind myself that a struggle can usually be flipped on its head and viewed as a privilege instead. And if that fails, a good amount of cursing and chocolate usually does the trick. Let me know in the comments below if any of you have experienced similar struggles finding your own work-life balance. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more horse transporting vlogs, horsey and mum life content. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye!